I have some new side dish recipes that you do not want to miss. The holidays are almost here, and if you're looking for something different to make for Thanksgiving or Christmas, I have got you covered. Hey y'all, I'm Valerie, and welcome to my kitchen. In today's video, I'm sharing 7 delicious side dish recipes that my family loved, and I think yours will too. Okay y'all, let's get started. I think your family will love this $1 million mashed potato casserole. To begin, you'll need 8 ounces of softened cream cheese. And I just added that to a very large bowl, along with 1/4 cup of sour cream and 1 cup of cottage cheese. And I always try to look for the small curd kind. I don't know if it makes a difference, but I feel like it kind of melts down in the casserole a little bit better. And for the seasonings, I did 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 2 teaspoons of dried parsley. And next, you're going to add in 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. You'll need 1.5 cups of that total, but we're going to save a 1/2 cup for the topping. Now you're going to mix all that together. Okay, now for the potatoes. The recipe called for 2 of the 24-ounce packages of pre-cooked mashed potatoes, something like the Bob Evans kind. You can do that, or you could even use leftover mashed potatoes. But I made mashed potatoes one night and I just made a lot of extra. So whatever you decide to use, I would do about 5 cups total. And mine did already have salt and pepper, a little butter, and a little milk in there. I added those half at a time and then mixed it real good in between there. It's just easier to mix versus dumping all those potatoes in and trying to stir it all up. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up. That just lets me know that you want to see more videos like this. The recipe didn't call for this, but I decided to throw a little pepper in there. So y'all can really just add whatever you like, just season to taste. And go ahead and get you a sample. That'll help you to know if you need to add something extra. After you get that all stirred together and get you a good arm workout, you're going to grab a 9x13 baking dish. And you do want to spray it with some nonstick spray. Now just add those potatoes right on in there. Now you're going to spread that out as best as you can, and it does not have to be perfect. And if you thought this was it, nope, we're adding a topping. Just because every casserole has to have a topping. I'm just using that same bowl I mixed the potatoes in. The recipe called for 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs. I was out, so I just used some Ritz crackers. And yes, I made a complete mess there. And I ended up using just a 1/2 sleeve. I also added 3 tablespoons of melted butter. Then give that a quick little mix. Then we're going to add in that reserved 1/2 cup of shredded cheese. And I had someone to ask about cheddar cheese, whether to use like mild, medium, or sharp. And the best way that I can figure out to explain it is it's kind of like hot sauce or salsa. You know how everybody has their own preference, mild versus spicy or hot. The sharp cheddar is just a stronger, a little more tangier flavor. So anytime I say cheddar cheese, you can use whatever you prefer. Now I'm adding on that topping and just spread it out and cover the whole top of that casserole. I thought it needed a little something extra here, so I sprinkled over some dried chives. And it makes it look a little prettier too. Now this casserole goes into the oven to bake at 350 for 50 to 60 minutes, uncovered. This turned out amazing. On this night, we had actually walked up to my daddy's house to eat for my nephew's birthday. So I took this with me and everyone had a fit over it. It was so good. and I'll definitely be making it for Thanksgiving. I feel like every holiday dinner, you just have to have a potato option, and this one was absolutely delicious. I'm just telling you, you gotta try this one. Oh my goodness, y'all can thank Maegen over at Maegen's Kitchen for this brown sugar sweet potato cornbread. In a medium-sized bowl, I added 1 cup of mashed sweet potatoes. You do not want to puree them, trust me. That's what I did the first time I tried this recipe. I was making baby food for my 7-month-old, and I roasted up some sweet potatoes and put them in my food processor. They were good for her, but they were not good for this cornbread. So just give them a light little mash. And to those sweet potatoes, I added 1 stick of melted butter and 2 eggs. The recipe called for 1 teaspoon of vanilla, but I thought maple extract would be really good in here. So I used half a teaspoon of vanilla and 3/4 teaspoon of maple extract. And if you don't have maple extract, you can just use all vanilla. And then you're just going to beat that together until it's well combined. Now you're going to set that to the side so we can work on the dry ingredients. In a large bowl, you're going to add 1 1/4 cup of self-rising cornmeal. And this is just our favorite. My dad picked this up at the farmer's market. So thank you for the cornmeal, Daddy. You're also going to add 1 cup of all-purpose flour, along with half a cup of packed brown sugar. And this is something else that the recipe didn't call for. But I'm making brown sugar sweet potato cornbread, so I thought 1 teaspoon of cinnamon would really take it to the next level. I also added 1 teaspoon of baking powder, half a teaspoon of baking soda, and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. You're just going to mix that up and get that brown sugar all broke up in there. Then you can go ahead and add in that sweet potato mixture. And the recipe says to stir it most of the way, then add in the milk and then beat it until smooth. So I was just trusting the process. It just says be careful not to overmix. Now I'm adding 1 cup of whole milk. And I didn't have whole milk just because I don't keep that on hand. So this is what I did. In a measuring cup, I added a couple tablespoons of heavy cream, and then I filled it the rest of the way up to the 1 cup mark with 2% milk. You can also do half a cup of heavy cream and half a cup of water. That should make you some whole milk. After I stirred that together a little bit, I got out my electric mixer and gave it a little mix. You're going to mix this until just combined. Just be careful not to overmix it. I'm making this in a cast iron skillet. I had stuck it in the oven for just a few minutes, get it a little warm, and then I greased it with some butter. And now you can go ahead and add in that cornbread batter. And you don't have to do this, but I did try to kind of smooth it around a little on top. But I don't think that matters too much. Now this goes into a preheated 375-degree oven for 25 minutes, or until that center is set. And while that was in the oven, I made up some maple butter to spread on top. I used half a cup of salted, softened butter. I added in 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, but you could also do molasses, and I also added a little dash of cinnamon. This is nice to have to serve alongside the cornbread too. And here it is out of the oven. It looks delicious. And while it was still warm, I went ahead and spread it on some of that maple cinnamon butter. And a big thank you to Maegen for sharing this recipe. Her channel is Maegen's Kitchen. I'll have that linked in my description box below. Y'all go check her out. She is so sweet and she shares some delicious recipes. This cornbread is sweet, but it's not overly sweet. It is definitely not dry. but that brown sugar, sweet potato, cinnamon maple flavor was something different, and I really liked it. This would be perfect sitting on your dinner table. You gotta have some kind of bread option, you know. And here's that maple butter I made up. Everyone loved this. I cut me a piece of cornbread and added that butter to the middle there, and that was delicious. Y'all know when I eat regular cornbread, I have to add on a little Duke's mayonnaise, but nope, Duke's mayonnaise would not be good on this. And just in case you're new here, I always have the recipe linked or either typed out in the description box below. These smothered green beans are a new family favorite. In a large skillet, I added 1 sliced onion along with 2 tablespoons of butter. I just sauteed those just to soften them up a little bit. Next, I've got 1 pound of bacon. I'm using this irregular bacon that I got from Aldi. Mama Mel always uses this, so I figured I'd give it a try. I just used my kitchen shears to chop it up into small pieces. Now you're just going to stir that up and cook that bacon until it's almost done, but not crispy. Now I'm taking this over to the counter so I can put it all together. And this green bean casserole is a really good alternative for those of you that don't like the traditional green bean casserole. It's just a little something different. And right now I'm making up a quick little sauce to pour over the top. In a small bowl, I added 2/3 cup of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/4 cup of melted butter, and 1/4 cup of the low sodium soy sauce. I also added 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, and I just used the kind in the jar. Next, just kind of break that brown sugar up and just mix it until it's well combined. I'm using a 9x13 baking dish for this. You'll need 5 cups of canned green beans. I'm using these whole green beans. You're just going to drain them and add them right on into the dish. And you'll see me kind of picking through the green beans here. Sometimes they have little stems in there, so you just want to make sure you get those out. And I did want to add a little something extra to this. When we have green beans, we usually always have some kind of potato in there. And I had 2 red potatoes, so I just diced those up and added those in. I think next time I'm going to add 1 more. I just wasn't sure if they would all fit in this casserole dish. So next time I make it, I might take away 1 can of green beans and add a few extra potatoes. Now I'm just taking the bacon and onions and spreading that on top. I could have done this in a large mixing bowl, but I didn't think that far ahead. So after I got everything in here, I kind of tossed them around to try to mix it all together. Now we're going to top everything with that brown sugar melted butter sauce we made up just a little bit ago. Hey, while I'm thinking about it, if you love easy recipes, I would really love to have you here. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. That way you get notified of all my future videos. Okay, the recipe says to bake this uncovered at 350 for 40 minutes. But y'all know I don't always follow the directions. So I covered it after 15 minutes because I was afraid that that bacon would get a little too brown. And I ended up letting this bake for 1 hour. This turned out so good. Craig is not super crazy about the regular green bean casserole with the cream of mushroom soup, but he loved this one. You could even make this the day before and put it together and bake it and everything, and just let it cool completely, cover it tightly, and then stick it in the refrigerator. And then the next day, all you have to do is Cover it tightly with foil, pop it in the oven, and warm it up. You could probably do like 350 for about 20 minutes. This has that sweetness to it, which made it amazing. My aunt stopped by this night and she had her a little sample. Now, she's supposed to be on a low-carb diet, and she mentioned trying this with the sugar-free brown sugar substitute, and I think that would totally work. Sometimes those tend to be a little sweeter, so I would probably reduce it to half the amount. But these are a must-try. This Southern cornbread dressing with sausage was a new one I tried. In a large skillet, I added 1 pound of sausage, and I just used the sage kind, but you could also use the original or even the spicy. I'm also adding 4 stalks of sliced celery and 1 large diced onion. Now you're just going to break that up and let it cook until that sausage is cooked through. Then you can go ahead and remove it from the heat, drain the grease, and head over to the counter. In a very large mixing bowl, I added in 1 can of cream of chicken soup. I bet cream of celery would also be good in here, but I just didn't have one on hand. And anytime I do any of the cream of soups, you can always change those up. You could do cream of celery, mushroom, chicken. Just do whatever you think would be good. I also added 2 eggs. The recipe didn't call for that, but I thought it needed it. And for the seasonings, I did half a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of the poultry seasoning. You're just going to stir that together and break those eggs up. Yes, I should have used my whisk there, but I didn't. Now you can go ahead and add in the sausage, celery, and onions. I melted 1 stick of butter and I'm adding that in, along with 2 cups of chicken broth. And now for the bread. The recipe called for 1 family-sized pan of cornbread, and that wasn't very specific to me, so I measured out the cornbread that I used and it ended up being 6 cups. I wasn't sure if that would be enough, so I also added in 6 slices of white bread. Or you could also crumble up some biscuits and add those in. And maybe that ended up being a little too much bread, so I added in another cup of broth. It's just really a consistency thing here. So if you need to add in more liquid to get it how you like it, next time I may even do a total of 4 cups of broth. That might help it to hold together a little bit better. And I may even add in an extra egg. I'm using a 9x13. I sprayed that with nonstick spray. Now I'm adding in that dressing mixture. Then you're just going to kind of spread it out into an even layer. And in true Sammi style, I went in with a little badilla complete. By the way, Christmas is right around the corner too, so y'all have to let me know what your favorite Christmas dish or Christmas recipe is. I love hearing y'all's suggestions. And let me tell you, y'all have some of the best ideas. I let this bake at 350 for about 35 minutes, or just until that top starts to get a little golden brown. This was absolutely delicious right here. It was so funny because Craig loves the regular, traditional dressing, and he is not a fan of sausage, but he loved this. He actually liked it better than my regular dressing. I wish it would have held together a little better, but I can be okay with that because this was so good. And I mean, we top it with gravy anyway, so it didn't really matter. But if you want to try to get this to hold together a little better, you may try adding an extra egg and maybe a little more broth. It was funny because I was telling my aunt about this and she said to save her a small piece, and I couldn't because my mama took all the leftovers. This honey butter skillet corn was another big hit. I doubled the recipe just in case you look at the recipe linked in my description box. In a large skillet, I added in 4 tablespoons of butter. I let that melt down. Then I added in 4 tablespoons of honey. and I just kind of eyeballed that honey. You're just going to whisk that and mix it all together. Then I added in 2 pounds of frozen corn. And the recipe specifically said not to let it thaw out, so you want it to still be a little frozen here. And by the way, I have my heat set to medium-high. You're just going to stir that around and let it cook. I'll let mine cook for about 7 or 8 minutes. You're kind of like sauteing that corn and kind of heating it through. Now I'm adding 3/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. I'm adding in 4 ounces of cream cheese. You can use the regular, but I had this whipped on hand, so I figured I'd use that. I figured it would melt down a little better. Now you're just going to stir that around and let it continue to cook. You can turn your heat down a little bit, but I just let it cook until that cream cheese was mixed in and melted really good. And if you feel like you need to, based on the consistency, you can always add in a couple splashes of milk. I was reading the reviews on this before I made it, and someone had mentioned that it tasted like buttermilk biscuits with honey, and it really does. It turned out so good. And I do like to kind of try to change things up and kind of bring y'all some new, different ideas. And hey, it helps me to find new family favorites. This spinach and artichoke rice casserole really had me wanting to try it. I wanted to start on the spinach first. I'm using 1 10-ounce package of chopped spinach. I let it thaw out, then I squeezed out as much of that liquid as possible, then I set it to the side. Now over in a large bowl, I added an 8-ounce package of softened cream cheese, along with a 15-ounce container of the ricotta cheese. And you can absolutely use cottage cheese instead. I also added 3/4 cup of milk, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. Now I'm just using my electric mixer to mix this until it's well combined. That's why you want to make sure your cream cheese is softened and at room temperature. Now you're going to add in 4 cups of cooked white rice and 1 14-ounce can of drained and finely chopped artichoke hearts. Now I'm adding in that spinach. I got it nice and all squeezed out there. And of course, y'all know what I do. I got to put my little spin on recipes. And y'all, I just felt like this needed bacon. So I added 1/2 pound of cooked and crumbled bacon. And also 1.5 cups of shredded mozzarella cheese and 1 cup of shredded Parmesan cheese. Now you're just going to stir this all together, get it all mixed up until it's well combined. And y'all see my bowl was pretty full there, so make sure you use a pretty big bowl. And now it's time to put this in a casserole dish. I'm using a 9x13. I sprayed that with nonstick spray. And just in case y'all are curious, I do use one of the more of a larger 9x13. It's just a tad bit deeper, but any 9x13 should be fine. Now I'm just spreading that out. And of course, we have to top it with a little more cheese. So I'm sprinkling over 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese and another 1.5 cups of the shredded mozzarella. And listen, y'all, if this looks like it would be a little too much cheese for you, just don't add as much. It'll still be delicious. But we love cheese, so I feel like the more the better. And besides, this is not an everyday thing, it's for the holidays, so y'all enjoy that food. Now this goes into the oven to bake at 325 for 40 to 45 minutes. And that was uncovered. I let it cook until that top got a little golden brown. I did turn the broiler on the last minute, but if you do that, just watch it. Someone had gave the tip to be careful when you're using a Pyrex dish with the broiler. So I'm going to try to be a little more careful about that. Now I have to say, this was very different, but my family loved it. And we did have one in the family that wasn't so crazy about the artichokes, but you could totally leave out the artichokes and this would still be delicious. especially with that spinach and bacon. I mean, bacon makes everything better. Do y'all agree? This sweet potato pineapple casserole is another new one. To get started, in a large bowl, I added a 40-ounce can of the cooked yams, and I did drain those. I also added in a little melted butter. The recipe calls for 1 cup divided. I went ahead and melted that whole stick. So right now I'm only adding in half. I'm also adding in 2 eggs. It looks like I only added 1 there, but I did use 2. That yolk just broke on one of them. And I broke out my meat chopper to just kind of mash those yams up before I went in with the mixer. And I decided to add in a dash of cinnamon. Now I'm just using my mixer to whip these up until they're smooth and creamy. You'll need a 9x13 baking dish. I did spray it with nonstick spray, or you could grease it up with a little butter. Now I'm adding in that sweet potato mixture. Then you're just going to spread that out into an even layer. And it is a pretty thick mixture, so you do have to work at it a little bit. You're going to need a 20-ounce can of pineapple rings. You do want to drain them. You can always use that juice for something else. I'm sure I'll find something to use it with. A coconut pineapple cake even sounds really good. Okay, and now I'm taking those pineapple rings and I'm placing them evenly on top of that casserole. I had 2 left here, so I was trying to make them all fit nice and pretty. So I ended up breaking those in half and placing them in the center there. It took me a minute to figure out how I was going to do this, but I figured it out. I'm learning as I go too. That's what you got to do. You got to have fun with it. Now for the next layer, I'm going to sprinkle over about 1/3 cup of dried cranberries. And you can do more of these or less of these, just whatever you think would be good. I just scattered them evenly on top there. And the recipe only called for 1/4 cup of chopped pecans, but we love pecans, so I did 1/2 cup. And I put those in the dish that I had the eggs in, so they all ended up trying to stick to the bottom. I was trying to save myself from having to wash an extra dish. I've got 1/4 cup of brown sugar here, and you're just going to sprinkle it over the top. Now I'm sprinkling over a little cinnamon, because we love cinnamon. The recipe called for 1/2 teaspoon, but I think I used more like a teaspoon. And do you remember that stick of butter that I melted earlier and used 1/2? Now I'm drizzling over that other 1/2. And just try to drizzle it evenly, that way it all gets covered with a little butter. Now this goes into the oven to bake at 350 for 30 minutes. This turned out really good. And I think the pineapple chunks or even the pineapple tidbits would be even better in this. It probably wouldn't look as pretty, but it would still be really good. This is just something new, something a little different, and we really enjoyed it. This is similar to the sweet potato souffle. And how do y'all like yours? Do you top it with marshmallows or pecans? I have actually never had it with marshmallows. So I might have to add that to my list of things to try. I do want to say I love you all, and I hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving. I really hope you enjoyed this video. You may also like these. Don't forget to subscribe down below for more easy recipes, and I will see you in the next one. All right, Mama, stop. Oh, Mercy, you're so funny. So funny. And 7 delicious side dish recipes. Mama, stop it. Oh, dear Lord Jesus, help me. I'm not gonna get this done. My mama is trying to distract me. That's right. Nani's trying to distract me. Why? Boy, can you sit down? Come here, sit down. Good boy. Sit. Hey, boy. Hey, boy. Sit down, go. Say, hey, my name is Oreo, and I'm a good boy. Mama, stop. It's not helping me.